All right. Good morning, everybody. How we doing? Good to see you all, and thank you for joining. I usually don't use a mic because I'm pretty loud as it is, but thank you for joining me. I know you had options. Hopefully, you learn a little bit today. We're going to be talking about demountable walls. Have you heard of demountable walls in the past? Awesome. So, have you heard of KI? All right. I'll tell you a little bit more about KI too before we get going. Couple of photos here. I just wanted to point out, you heard I'm a cheesehead. It kind of ties into KI because we're headquartered up there. 100% employee owned company. I've been with them. This is my 8th year. So straight out of college, I've been with them. And I always get to go back to Green Bay and check out the Packers, go to some games. I had the opportunity to take my fiance a couple years ago. Photo of me fishing, my 2 rescue dogs. We volunteered recently at Ocoee High School through Junior Achievement. I love doing that. Ocoee High School is actually, they got to the national level. So they're working on a case study with Arby's, which is really cool. So they're working with Arby's to help them actually market better to teenagers. So obviously those commercials are all about the meats, so they don't target their marketing too well to teenagers. And then lastly, I had to show the cheesehead. This is actually our partner over at Four Roots. Has anyone heard of Four Roots here locally? Have you? Yeah. Did you? So, correct. Yeah. So we have the privilege of partnering with Four Roots and John Rivers. For those of you who haven't heard of it, Four Rivers Barbecue, founder, CEO John Rivers is kind of the visionary behind the Four Roots campus, 40-acre parcel of land. They're going to have a lot going on there, from sustainable farming, a state-of-the-art greenhouse, education building, museum, multi-phase project. But we're actually partnering in the education building, and we were able to donate all the furniture that's going in there. So if you ever have the opportunity to check it out, it should be fully installed by the end of May and up and running at the education building come this summer. So today we're here to talk about demountable walls. It's something that KI actually manufactures and produces. We're cradle to grave turnkey provider for this. This is actually a CEU presentation that we give to the A&D community. If any of you are architects or designers, let me know, because you can actually get credit for this. Changed it up a little bit to, pivot a little bit and focus more on education, of course. Before I get started, real quick about KI. We've been around since the 40s. We started with the metal folding chair, which is our flagship product. Believe it or not, the Villages is still a client of mine, and they buy a ton of these things. They get a nice 2-inch seat cushion, and they use them for their mahjong and bingo in their rec centers. But we've developed into a whole lot more than that. So we're a leading provider in education, between higher education as well as K-12. So we even have auditorium seating as well as demountable walls. But I'm going to go ahead and jump in here. Please, if you have any comments, questions, just fire away. I'm pretty casual when it comes to these. I like to have more of a conversation. But when it comes to walls, just a few things that we want to focus on today are things like efficiency. Acoustics is a really big one for us. Security and safety within your facilities. The main purpose of the conversation is to examine how demountable walls and storefronts can aid in the safety, sustainability, and overall well-being of those who are working in high-performance buildings. These are our four learning objectives. So we're going to start, and this is really going to be the core of our conversation today: improving efficiency, sustainability, and safety of the renovation and new construction process. Really, I think where a lot of people think of demountable walls is just this: how does it compare to traditional construction, right? What is the price comparison? What does it look like from an overall construction standpoint? I'm going to spend a lot of time there. Sound is a big one. So we'll talk about NRC versus STC ratings, how they compare and how they actually tie into demountable walls. Looking at demountable walls as far as safety, health, and security elements when it's actually installed. And then finally, touch a little bit on seismic events. So I'm actually showing a picture here of the Chrysler building, and the reason I'm showing this is demountable walls have become somewhat of a trendy topic, more of an of the essence conversation, which might make you think that they're new, but demountable walls were actually installed in the Chrysler building in the 1920s. Back then, it was mostly focused on the furniture element of things, and demountable wall manufacturers have really pivoted and changed to be more architecturally driven. Obviously, we know technology has influenced a major workplace transition. COVID impacted this majorly too. So we continue to talk about hybrid learning, hybrid working, and technology plays an inherent role in that. But we now know that the tools needed to get work done no longer really require us to be in a fixed location. So if we can work within our facilities and maybe use something that's a little bit more flexible, something that you can maneuver on demand, it might be beneficial for your own facilities. I'll ask any brave souls to shout something out here, but in your opinion, why aren't clients specifying demountable walls more on projects? Enough said there. That's the number one thing that, usually everyone says is cost, right? That initial cost versus conventional construction is that biggest hurdle to overcome. Hopefully today, we're going to hit on some talking points that you can take with you, share amongst your teams and yourselves to maybe think about it a little bit differently. So the interesting thing with this is usually demountable will always be higher than traditional construction, but we're starting to see even some of the contractors that we work with directly, they're calling out specs for storefront using demountable because the cost of materials continue to rise. So this is becoming a little bit more of an apples to apples conversation, and we'll see more of that coming up here. So this was a survey summary that was conducted with one of our partners on KI Architectural Walls, and we simply asked which of the following would benefit you and your clients. Just to reiterate that, obviously, number one is less expensive product offerings. Oftentimes, another one that comes up is lead times, right? How quickly can we get it there? How quickly can we get it installed? So let's jump into objective one here. So a lot going on this slide. In a nutshell, though, it's really focused on churn and retention data. We know at the end of the day that a company's number one expense is its people. It's the actual employee themselves. If the workplace is not inviting, quite frankly, you're going to go work somewhere else. There's opportunities to work somewhere else, or even in education, there's opportunities for students to learn somewhere else. It ties into absenteeism as well. So we obviously know that employees are less likely to call in sick if they have an inviting workplace. And according to the CDC, loss in productivity due to absenteeism costs employers around $225 billion annually. So because of this alone, companies are really finding value in creating great spaces that really welcome and invite those people to stay longer. And they're actually using this as a recruitment and retention tool for those employees. I put a note here on Gen Y. So Gen Y is the millennial generation. I'm a member of that. And we get a bad rap sometimes, and justifiably so. But with that being said, I will say a lot of millennials were well educated coming out of college, and they were not necessarily saying, hey, I want to go work for KI or whoever it might be and gain a whole bunch of tenure. They're perfectly fine with getting 2 to 3 years experience, jumping job to job and kind of pumping up that resume. There's nothing wrong with that, but obviously it creates a major challenge for our actual people we're working with, right? How are they going to not only attract and retain that talent, right? There's a lot that goes into that, especially when they have the mindset that they're not going to stick around long. So how can we create an environment that is more warm, that is more welcoming, that'll have them stick around a little bit longer? Daylighting, something as simple as daylighting actually might help here. So we'll look at some quick statistics here, but we found that a space providing natural light has been shown to increase productivity of upwards of 16%. Simply by including that natural daylight, bringing that into the interior of the building can really help with productivity. It also ties into absenteeism, where we can reduce sick days by almost 7%. So if we look at a 150-person company, proper daylighting could actually save that company over $16,000 in sick time expenses alone. That pricing gap that we're going to continue to get into today really begins to shrink when we even just look at using architectural wall and a glass demountable solution. And it really becomes a tangible justification for our employees when they start to compare traditional construction versus demountable. So let's take a little deeper dive here into some other things. So normally with traditional construction, some type of soffit condition for that connection is going to be required, right? The beauty of a demountable wall is it doesn't need a soffit condition, so we can connect directly to the ceiling grid. So when it comes to planning something on demand where you might want to get that installed quickly, it's a great option because we don't need to worry about actually connecting to the soffit. Another point with the soffit too is they don't really serve much of a purpose unless they're actually going all the way up to the plenum. There's no acoustical performance. There's nothing that's going to help there. So if we can just connect to the ceiling grid, it's again going to help with coordination. It's going to be more flexible, and you can work directly with your vendor to get this not only designed but installed. I mean, we know this, especially some of the older buildings that we work and play in. It's these floors are not level. And this becomes a major problem with traditional construction and glazers because at the end of the day, they don't really have much of a threshold. So what does that mean? More expense, longer timeline, because they're going to have to go in there, float the floor, allow them to come in and actually get that installed. Floating is slow, it's expensive, it really pushes out that construction timeline. Demountable wall manufacturers have the ability to actually adjust the base. So you can see here in this slide, these are our 3 solutions. We have upwards of almost 2 inches of flexibility here. So if we're working early on in the process, oftentimes we can actually go into production based off of contractor hold-tos. Really save that time because we know we have that flexibility. We can go to site, take our verified field dimensions, and then we're going to actually cut those panels to length at the plant before it ever even comes to site, which makes for a really smooth and quick installation. Another one here is faster design iteration. So that early engagement with me as the representative or KI as the manufacturer is going to really be paramount when it comes to not only your budgeting, but the timeline of when you want it installed. So if we're working early on in the process, we're going to make sure we include internal load bars. Do you want it pre-wired? We're even doing pre-plumbing as well. I just mentioned this to Troy earlier, but we got the news yesterday that we're back on the state of Florida contract. So we've been using cooperatives like Omnia, Sourcewell. You can still do that, but it took a little bit longer for us to get back on state this year. We're rocking and rolling. This plays right into that. Demountable wall is on contract. So we put all of that onto the proposal. It really makes for a smooth purchasing and procurement process as well because we have all that documentation ready to go for you. I like this slide. This is one that I would definitely say just keep this one in mind. When we're actually comparing conventional versus demountable, I mentioned apples to apples earlier. It's hard, right? Because in those direct hard costs for traditional construction, all of these are separate trades. In demountable, it's all included. So when we talk about actually consolidating that construction schedule, we can help there because we're doing a lot of this on our own. And it's condensed into one trade, which would be the demountable wall manufacturer. Again, visually, this helps show that. So in conventional project schedules, it's very linear, right? So you need to go from HVAC to drywall, electrical. If there's a holdup anywhere along that process, you need to stop. That construction schedule is getting pushed out. So that really makes for a fluid construction schedule, as we all know. Whereas demountable, you can shrink that upwards of 15%, knowing that it's really dumped into one trade. And a lot of what we are doing and supplying is going to be done at the plant before it ever even gets to site. Shorter schedules equal shorter bonds, which, is less insurance costs. Your college, university can obviously generate revenue quicker, utilize that space faster, get employees and students into that facility quicker as well. So I've been talking about wall for several years now, and there was a day that I was standing here and talking about this. Banks are our number one market where they're moving the wall around, they reconfigure it a lot. We put a red X through this because we've come to the realization that although it still is a benefit and you have the opportunity to reconfigure, a lot of our clients aren't doing it. So although it is demountable, you have it, you can do whatever you want with it. It really comes down to other things like we just discussed, but also there's a verifiable acoustical performance that we're going to get into. That's going to be the same STC rating in the student union as the media center. Consistent storefront aesthetic across campus. If you used a system like this, it's going to look the same. It's consistent. So these are just some of the main reasons why, which really ties into a cost of ownership discussion, right? So yes, you can still move it around. You can reconfigure it if you'd like, but it's more of an ROI discussion now. So movable, demountable wall depreciates just like the tables and chairs you're sitting at, around 7 to 8 years, where traditional construction is 40. So you have tangible tax benefits that you can look at, and it's a cost of ownership discussion instead of looking at the bottom line at that initial quote that you receive. Customer can recover those costs quicker, focus your resources on more important things on campus, and really put a lot of this onto your manufacturer who's going to be with you from the cradle to the grave. If you want to know more about this, we actually have a link to the IRS website where you can actually put down your zip code, look at some of the tax savings, and look at what it's going to be 5-10 years down the road. So keep this in mind because it is more of that cost of ownership discussion than that upfront cost. So we'll get into some visuals here. What we're showing on the left is more of your traditional construction job site. In the middle, we have site-built components where we have a lot of manufacturers like KI that might have more site-built. The problem with that is there's more parts, there's more pieces, which could potentially lead to losing things on site. The longer it's on site, they could get damaged. And then you have unitized modular where you could do a 10-foot high panel, 5 foot wide, prefabricated, pretty much ready to go when it gets to site. Usually what we do as well is we'll send out the ceiling grid floor track 2 weeks early so our installers can get to site, have that ready to go. So when the panels get there, you take them off the pallet, they pop them into the ceiling, and then they have the leveling glides on the base to go from there. So that really helps with creating that speed of installation. Couple visuals here. This is actually at Publix, their headquarters in Lakeland. We worked with them on their offices. They wanted more of the segmented look, as you can see here. I mentioned 10 foot. That's kind of our threshold. We can do a solid panel up to 10 feet. They wanted to do segmented with the glass transom. Lots of flexibility here. I mentioned this because, as state of the art as Publix is and how big they are, it got really granular with the details. We did an actual mock-up with them, and they wanted to see how fast we could go. So they had us go head-to-head with another demountable wall manufacturer, and it was like traditional stopwatch style. From start to finish, they had us put it up, and then we actually took it down. And we ended up winning that job because of the speed of installation and the process overall. Told you I'm from Green Bay, so I like to get back to the plant and take pictures. So these are just some pictures from over the years where This is how it ships. So our plant is in, our wall plant is in Manitowoc, Wisconsin. Anyone ever heard of Manitowoc? Anyone familiar with Wisconsin at all? It's up there. Awesome. Cool. Yeah, it's just up there somewhere. It's cold. Just talked to my dad yesterday. He's like talking about 4 inches of snow up north. I'm like, that still exists? I forgot about snow. But I like getting up there, just showing kind of pictures in the plant. This is how it's shipping, right? This is going to be palletized. They're all unitized. So when we already have that stuff kind of laid out on site already, you can see how these installers can just really take them off and start installing them pretty quickly. Really granular pictures here, but general rule of thumb is 1 man-hour per wet seal when it comes to glazing. We talked a little bit about those conditions with the flooring. It gets tough here. You know, if those glazers are not right on, everything stops. We're going to have to pay more money to float the floor, push things out further. Talked a little bit about those site-built components too. Just means a longer install at the end of the day. It's a little bit different than unitized. So let's get more into some visuals here, adaptive to building conditions. So what we're showing here is just trying to match the exterior glazing with the interior. So they have vertical, horizontal mullions shown here outside. They wanted to bring that into the interior as well. This comes up a lot. So how about unique ceiling conditions? If it's angled, if it's curved, what can we do? Can we even use you as a manufacturer? The answer is yes. So when we go out early on and take verified field dimensions, if we know there's these unique ceiling conditions, we'll actually go out and laser measure everything. So again, it's going to be prefabricated and cut at the plant based on those measurements that we took early on in the process. Aesthetics, so you see some more visuals here. Frosted glass. You could really apply any type of application on there that you have. We usually like to use local vendors for that too. We can do it in the plant, but if you wanted to put some type of branding, stuff like that, we can work with preferred vendors that you have as well. Wanted to point out, I mentioned 10 feet. We can go up to 12. So if you wanted to do a 12-inch, transom on top of it, we can do that too. So 2-foot stacker on top of 10, that's really our threshold. I should update this because my talking point here is it almost looks like it's curved. It's not. We're just connecting to the grid and kind of doing it to make it visually look like that. But we actually are offering curved glass as an opportunity now too. So I'll tell you right now, that's not cheap. Curved glass is not cheap. So if we want to talk about cost, it might not be something to look at, but we can do it. We do a lot of different doors. So pivot, butt hinge, sliders. The cool thing with sliders, if you have a tight space, on average, you save about 9 square feet of floor space. So we can do a 10-foot door on sliders. Could be a barn door, something like this. We got a video coming up as well, which will show the soft close mechanism as well. Endless finish options, so wood veneer, laminate, magnetic marker board. We do that a lot in education. This is a good depiction of that. So you can do floor to ceiling magnetic marker board. You could even turn the panel and just do it, one section of magnetic marker board as well. This system here is called Evoke. There's only a 1/16 of an inch reveal between that panel. So this is the closest visually to drywall, but it has a 50 STC rating coming right out of the factory. So it's a little bit more higher performing than drywall, obviously. I mentioned the door options. A lot of times what comes up with doors is the hardware. We have our own standard hardware, but if you have a standard on site that we need to match, we can certainly do that. Sliding. Yeah. That's another thing. I mean, we've done We've done like 6-foot ladder poles. Like those things are $2,000 alone. And sometimes if you want to do an apples to apples comparison, that gets dicey too, because the hardware can really make the cost go up quickly. So I'm not saying just don't ever use drywall. Obviously, there's going to be drywall on site and we play nice with it. So all of our systems can integrate with drywall. So whether it's the door, whether you want to do a demising panel, whatever it might be, we can integrate and connect with drywall. This is that video. This is standard. So all of our sliding doors are going to have that soft close mechanism. So it's not going to damage the wall. You can't slam that door shut. And then you'll see at the end, we actually have a drop seal, a sound seal at the base of the door too, which helps kind of enclose the sound within the room. This is our light line system, butt glazed glass. So you might have seen it back when I showed the palette of the wall panels. But it's literally just a strip of 3M tape that you peel off during installation, and it's a dry seal. So those connect. You're not having to do any type of caulking or anything like that. It's just a dry seal, and it's all butt glazed. And again, 10 feet tall. Light line, 1/2 inch too. So it'll be a higher STC rating than your 1/4 inch glass. Just touching a little bit on sustainability. These are reusable. So I mentioned, clients aren't necessarily moving this stuff, but if you had an instance where you did need to move it or reconfigure, you can reuse a lot of that stuff. You might need a filler panel or something like that, but you can move it somewhere in campus. That wall is yours. So again, it's a cost of ownership discussion. We're not producing much waste, so we're literally resting on the floor and connecting into the ceiling grid. So we're not actually going to cut into the ceiling grid at all. We send out clips that clip right into the grid. And then we just have little carpet screws for the carpet. So we're not really ruining any of the integrity of that. No chemical off-gassing. Kind of an interesting stat here. Drywall contractors budget for 20% waste, which is scary. And you can see more statistics here. Almost 25% of municipal solid waste comes from construction waste year over year. We produce a whole lot of it. Another thing I haven't really touched on yet, but when you think of loose furniture, tables, chairs, desks, it's very easy to integrate. So early on in the design process, we would just basically specify where you want that internal load bar, so we can mount, overheads, whatever it is, for storage, TVs, anything like that. All right, so pushing into more of sound here. What effect does noise play in the workplace? This is rhetorical. We obviously know that sound plays a major effect on all of us. It's not even at work. Could be at home, screaming kids, whatever we're dealing with. We know that it has a psychological and cognitive effect too. Just showing a study here that was done at the University of Sydney. Sound privacy was by far, the #1 concern for these office workers that they surveyed. It's my favorite picture. But at the end of the day, it's true. Continual noise can cause a fight or flight response. And it kind of begs the question, are the spaces within our facilities being designed to help actually control sound? Or is it just more so used for aesthetics and visual? Demountable wall is a great solution to integrate into the built environment to allow for adapting on demand and future growth. I hate to bring it up again, but we learned this through COVID too. A lot of our clients needed to make decisions quickly on integrating some type of privacy space, whatever they could do on site, and work with the facilities that they had to integrate something. These systems are great. I mean, these are great systems to use where we can we can literally drop in a ceiling like you see here. We're not disrupting anything up above. And it helps to be able to offer some of those additional spaces that technology is influencing, right? So if they need to go in there, have a Teams call, whatever it is, it's another space that you're creating within a space on campus. Very recent install. This was up in New York at St. Francis College, I believe, and they used one of our new freestanding wall systems here, and they're using it for students to use as collaboration spaces and huddle rooms. So, sliding door, it's not going floor to ceiling, and they actually have a louvered ceiling. I'm not sure if you can really see that too well, but those have an NRC rating, so it helps a little bit with sound. But if we're going below the ceiling like that, we don't need to worry about fire suppression and HVAC either. So talk about speed, we can really drop in a space for them. So if we're 18 inches from the ceiling, we don't need to integrate it at all. So they just have louvered slots that expose it. So it's just open. If we drop a ceiling in, that's where we need to get a GC involved, and they would just need to drop it into the ceiling. We're working on a proprietary fire suppression that's built into the ceiling. So if it reaches a certain temperature in there, it just goes off. It was approved in California, so I would imagine it would be approved here soon. So NRC versus STC, do you know a little bit about this? I won't go through it too much. This kind of shows it here. At the end of the day, NRC measures the amount of energy being absorbed, where STC is basically trying to block that sound. When it comes to demountable walls, we focus on STC. So everything that we have is going to have that verified acoustical STC rating. This is showing a blend of STC with NRC tiles that are integrated at the top. So nothing is rated for us with NRC, but we can integrate that to help absorb some of that too. So you'll really have those superior acoustics. And then here's a visual too, because this is all 22 gauge steel. It's magnetic. You can just get these aftermarket magnetic pieces too that, they'll be cheaper than buying from us. If you just want to get these off Amazon, stick them on there. It helps absorb the sound too. I don't expect you to remember this, but if you're interested, I can definitely send this as a follow-up, but it kind of shows the breakdown of STC ratings. I mentioned 50 is really the top for us with our solid wall. That 1/2-inch glass that we looked at, you're almost at 40, right around 37. And where's drywall? Yeah, drywall falls in right around 38. So if you're looking at that solid alternative of 50, you're really going to have that higher performance. This is a funny granular picture too, but we've been on job sites, we've seen this where there's debris everywhere. Obviously, it affects air quality, right? And it's not only during the construction process, but it's after, because all that stuff goes up. It's going to come down eventually, and it comes down slowly. So if we're using demountable wall that really has no elements of debris, job site's going to be cleaner. We're also not disrupting the job site. Oftentimes, if we're doing something on site, employees don't need to leave. We'll do a section over here. They might need to go to a different office, but we can be on site and not really be disrupting much. This has changed a little bit, but it's still something to kind of tie into the reduction of trades. Obviously, if you're having one vendor like us on site doing a lot of this stuff, there's going to be less people to bump into one another. Can reduce on-site daily staffing levels by more than 50%. Ability to pre-wire, and we're even doing plumbing as well. Everything we do and draw, we have our own designers on staff. It's drawn to International Building Code, ADA, all of this code stuff. We really like to get in the trenches with you and get ahead of that early, because we don't want to have to worry about anything later on where there might be red flags. So we like to work with you directly just to make sure we get ahead of that. I mentioned some of the other things. So, mag locks, electric strikes, integrating power, electrical data. You're seeing a TV literally embedded into one of our panels there. So you can embed it, you can mount it proud, whatever you want to do there. That's where we would be having those discussions early on, hey, where's that internal load bar? Where do we need to actually mount that TV? Yeah, you're jumping the gun. Yep, they are. UL listed and approved. So it's all of our installers are certified in the state of Florida too when it comes to this. And they have the ability to kind of, a lot of this is done early on in the process. But if they need to pivot, change things up on site, they can do that too. So whether it's changing where the thermostat needs to go or where it needs to be put, they have the experience and know where to put all that stuff. I'll breeze through this one quick. Who wants to take a guess here? Which of the following North American cities requires seismic considerations? Yeah, everyone's right. All the above. It's funny, we think of the West Coast. I mean, that's definitely the red zone, but seismic is kind of all across the U.S., and this changes on a daily basis. So although we don't have to worry about it in Florida right now, you can see it's gonna creep down. It'll be here eventually, and we'll have to actually consider seismic conditions amongst so much other things in Florida. I was gonna say we'll be under. Yeah. So there you go. I mean, it's getting close. But this is what it would look like for demountable wall. If we needed to consider seismic conditions, we have that seismic bracing that actually connects up to the plenum. We've had clients that actually requested this because they don't trust that it's going to stay put. We went through all that testing and it will. Usually once they see the price of this, they're like, okay, we trust you. Last questions here that sometimes come up are storefront or demountable solutions fire rated? No. In order to be fire rated, you need to connect up above. So like I said, we only connect to the ceiling grid or the soffit. So we wouldn't be fire rated, but we can achieve a smoke rating. There's your question there. We are UL approved. And this is more healthcare driven, but we can be clean room approved as well. That wraps it up. We hit on all those learning objectives. That's it. Any questions?
Then how do you handle it? Can you do transfer drills?
We don't do that. Again, that would be where we need to coordinate. And we
transfer drills through your wall. Because if I already got supplies and returns where I want them, I'm going to change your system up, move it around. Then maybe I do or maybe I don't want to change things.
Yeah.
Can you offer transfer drills through your wall?
We've done it. It just depends if it is being moved, It doesn't come up often. And then of course, taking a step back there, if we discover something early on during the verified field dimension process, we have to, unfortunately, sometimes, the panel is going to fall directly on a return sprinkler. And, whenever I line it up and I look up, I'm like, dang. It's because sprinklers aren't fun to move. We got to get everyone involved, but it's inevitable and we deal with it. But again, that's why if you can do it early on, and by then we already have the design done, like everything's good to go. It could literally be in production at the time while that's getting moved. So.
The solid panels are 22 gauge metal.
Steel, yeah. Yep. There's.
So, the electrician here gets a call to say, hey, I need a new outlet in my office because we're adding people. Okay, pre-allocate pre-wires, but how do I add another? Do I have, is that wall insulated?
It is insulated. So the cool thing.
So if
this is a UL listed assembly. What is it? You have a warranty?
Yeah, there's a 10-year warranty with all this.
So, to lead into his question, if we do decide to cut and add into it, how does that affect the roof?
You can't cut. We would have to cut. But
That's where he said cradle to the grave. We don't touch it. So if something breaks, we don't touch it.
Yeah, well, what about the door?
Exactly, we don't touch it. The same with cubicle walls. We don't touch it.
yeah, but with lock and core is a little bit different. That's going to be your own security where you'd want to manage that. But to go a little bit back to your question though, with those panels, it's just a skin that's popped in there, so that comes out easy. So if there's anything behind there that needs to be done,
Put that call.
Yeah.
AI to have them come and put the outlet or a fire alarm or something else. A lot of times, all case facilities and all facilities have to have the testing in the building for emergency radio.
okay,
Are you aware of that?
no,
Okay, so as we're building a new building or renovating a building, we actually have a person on our campus that comes in and does testing in every single space of the campus to see if the emergency radio systems work in that space.
okay,
Metal is usually a big piece that will cut off that signal in a person.
really,
So that's the question, how do we work with that?
I don't know. That's the first I've heard of that. It's metal, but it doesn't create an echo chamber, right? Because
No, but it's not does the signal get through? I mean, one example I think of is Wi-Fi.
yeah.
We have a lot of Wi-Fi nodes around every building, but they place them based on where they're needed, but that will really block the Wi-Fi signal.
No, that's a valid point and valid question. We haven't had issues with Wi-Fi or any Bluetooth or anything like that, but yeah, I mean we're using it in a lot of different spaces. Even think of large corporations and businesses too. I mean, they need to obviously have Wi-Fi across that facility, and that one's interesting to me. Thank you for your time.